New documents reveal advance warning the FBI had of the violence that would ultimately ensue on January 6th. An FBI agent acknowledged in a February investigative report that angry Trump supporters were talking openly in the days before the attack about bringing guns to the Capitol. According to the report by FBI Special Agent Patricia Norden, she wrote this, quote, "Users in multiple online groups and platforms discuss traveling to the Capitol armed or making plans to start a revolution on that day." The document was entered into court records last week. It does not say whether the FBI's review of social media posts was conducted before or after January 6th. The new details clash with FBI Director Christopher Wray and his comments that the Bureau did not have, quote, actionable intelligence about the deadly Capitol attack. So, Mika, this runs into this conversation about whether it was just online chatter that the FBI didn't have enough to go on, or whether there were real credible threats to the Capitol that day and what intelligence agencies knew about it.
Yeah, joining us now, Democratic member of the Select Committee on Intelligence, Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut. He's also chairman of the newly established Committee on Economic Disparity and Fairness and Growth, which we'll get to in just a moment. But this new information, I mean, it also backs up the claim that some are refuting or ignoring, that this was planned, that this was put together, and this was pushed by Trump and many who follow him to have a riot at the Capitol, an insurrection. Whether or not the FBI is still trying to identify social media posts and Facebook, which in a lot of cases the advertisements disappear after they go out there, it's going to be hard to put together where all this came from, but they're slowly piecing it together.
So what does the intel show?
Well, at some level, this is not surprising. We've known for a long time that there were groups, whether it was the Proud Boys or these sort of weird militia groups that acted in units. You could actually see that when you were watching the television, that really acted in military fashion. Right. And my conclusion is there's no question that there was planning. There's no question that there were people hell-bent on doing violence.
Obvious.
Now, it's a big jump from, we're going to take a gun and we're going to hurt some people, which I think is what some folks had in mind, to we have a revolution. Now, once you saw these people inside, they were stealing lecterns and hamming it up. They didn't have a plan to take over the government. So what about the FBI director
saying that they didn't have actionable intelligence?
Well, at some point in time, that becomes absurd, right? Now, maybe whether that point in time is 2 days before, and look, this is why we needed a January 6th commission to figure out if, in fact, they had intelligence, and if so, what they did with it. But when there is a march on the Capitol, when you see thousands of people, that's a walk that takes 45 minutes or so. Yeah. And in that 45 minutes, what happened as well? That's a question we need to answer.
So Mike, I'm reminded, and I won't reveal the FBI director who told you this in the years after 9/11, but he told you if you saw what comes across our desk every day, you would crawl under your bed in a fetal position, talking about all the threats, right?
That's correct.
It's always, after the bomb goes off, it's always easy to find that strand that everybody can say, we'll see, look at this, why didn't you act on it? When, as your off-the-record conversation with the FBI director revealed, there is so much, quote, actionable intelligence that they've got to sort through and figure out what's real and what's not real.
Yeah, the director at that point in time was talking about the intel reports, the overnight intel reports that he gets access to, or got access to, early in the morning prior to going to the White House. And it's the same today, Joe. We all know that. The overnight intel reports about threats posed to the United States around the world are colossal in number. And Congressman Himes, I'm wondering how you deal and speak with colleagues who, in this vein, knowing what happened on January 6th, refuse to go forward with the ultimate commission that will tell us the roots of how it happened, who put it together, who was impacted by it, and the impact it had on the country and of you people who work in the Capitol.
It's very hard. It's very hard. I sometimes say the American public didn't appreciate the extent to before January 6th. There were actually deep personal relationships across the aisle, unlikely ones, right? That began to change on January 6th. It wasn't the rejection of the 1-6 commission. It was watching our colleagues, after an attempt on their lives, after an attempted coup against the United States, still file into the chamber to promote the lie that had led to that violence. That was beyond painful to watch. And then, as you point out, to say, oh, well, let's just put this behind us. And that's what they're doing, right? Now, inside the Republican conference, of course, there are people who are appalled by Donald Trump, but they don't want to talk about it. And what they don't realize is that if you don't talk about it, all of these questions that we're asking this morning may not get answered. And that means there's a higher probability that it happens again. And because of that, a lot of those personal relationships that I've been talking about have been badly damaged. And they're going to take some time to rebuild.
Congressman Himes, it's Willie Geist. So what do you do to rebuild that? Because, as you say, people want to watch things get done, and we're going to talk about one of the issues you're working on at this moment. But how do you sit across from people, some of them cynically, who are saying, no, actually, January 6th wasn't as bad as your eyes tell you? Or, in fact, one member of Congress from Georgia who stood there and barricaded the door so he knew exactly what the threat was inside that House chamber, he's come out and said, well, they were just tourists on a visit, strolling through Statuary Hall. How do you work with those people? Give some people hope, if there is some, that relationships can be repaired and things actually can get done, instead of us talking about why you guys are so split.
Well, it's very hard, Willie, and candidly, until the rest of the Republicans in the conference uniformly reject the reshaping of history that you see out of a relatively small number of them. I mean, the ones, as you point out, who said, oh, well, that was just a normal tourist day, or it was the FBI, or it was Antifa, all of the lies that are an attempt to recast this away from Donald Trump. Until the bulk of Republicans reject that and say, we know what happened and that's not true, it's going to be very, very hard. But in the meantime, look, I'll tell you what I tell myself, which is I was elected to get things done. At the end of the day, I was elected by my constituents to improve the lives of people in southwestern Connecticut.
Right.
And if that requires me to work with folks that I feel have done a terrible thing with respect to the health of our republic, I got to hold my nose and do it. And I'm not universal, by the way, in that point of view. But look, I was sent there to make progress for my constituents, but sometimes that requires, holding my nose and having a gin and tonic to make it happen.
You look in the Senate, and there is some bipartisan legislation, Congressman, that's getting passed in the Senate, and it's between people that didn't vote to undermine the election. So we always say here there are three parties: there are Republicans, Democrats, and the insurrectionist party. So it's got to be. It's got to be frustrating to see some of those people that voted against certifying it and pretending that 1/6 didn't happen. Let me ask you about a commission a project that Nancy Pelosi has put you in charge of, and as a former constituent of your district, it seems very appropriate that she asked you.
Yeah, so you're talking about the Select Committee on Economic Disparity and Fairness and Growth. And it actually plays into the thing we were just talking about, which is disparity in this country. Economic disparity is as bad as it ever has been. The top 1% are doing as well relative to everybody else as they have ever done. And at some point, that becomes corrosive to our politics. It becomes corrosive to our economy, and I think it offends us morally at some point.
And in my former district, a place that I love, New Canaan, that area, you represent constituents from Greenwich to Bridgeport.
That's right.
And there are people that are in the top 0.01%, and those at the bottom of the economic ladder.
10 minutes away. 10 minutes away. And here's why I'm excited. We were just talking about bipartisanship. It's not a blue problem, right? I see a form of disparity in Fairfield County, where you used to live, that you just described accurately. Go into Appalachia. Go into ruby red districts, and you will see huge disparity.
Middle America,
Middle America, rural America, right, represented by Republicans. We're going to start by saying, folks, this is a problem everywhere. What's the nature of the problem? And then, again, in the spirit of what we were just talking about, no subject is going to create quite as much of a partisan argument. Obviously, the Democrats and the Republicans have different solutions. But I'm going to work hard to find, even if it's a small overlap, I'm going to work pretty hard to find those areas where we might actually agree across the aisle on addressing this problem. Yeah. Because it's not a blue problem. It's not a red problem. It's an American problem.